The next news break coming up in less than an hour. Hannity and Colmes returns right now.
Welcome back to Hannity and Colmes. In the wake of the resignation of Congressman Mark Foley, a new sex scandal has emerged, but this one involves a Democrat. Ohio Democratic gubernatorial candidate Ted Strickland faces charges that he attempted to cover up the case of a former campaign manager convicted of exposing himself to minors. The charges were first raised by Strickland's Democratic primary challenger, recently brought back to the forefront by his Republican opponent, Ken Blackwell. Joining us now, Republican strategist Rich Galen and Democratic strategist Laura Schwartz. Rich, I know you're from this area. I just spent some time with Ken Blackwell. I think this is a huge story here at the end of the day. I mean, we're talking about a guy that is basically worked for Strickland, who had been convicted of exposing himself to kids, and that this guy knew about it and then traveled with the guy. You know, in light of the Foley scandal, why is there little media coverage in the state of Ohio where I am tonight? And do you think this could become a blockbuster issue in this campaign?
Well, I think in Ohio it very may well do that. I mean, Ted Strickland, I grew up I went to school at Marietta, Ohio. My wife's from there. My son was born there. So, and that's Strickland's district. And I have to tell you that knowing that he employed a guy that might have exposed himself to my son when he was young, I think does play into this stuff. And, you know, the notion of saying, well, I didn't know that this had happened, or I didn't know that I didn't know the record had been expunged. Let me tell you something. Congress passed Sarbanes-Oxley, meaning that the head of every major corporation is responsible for everything that happens in that corporation. And no member of Congress should be allowed to say, I didn't know. It was his staff. It's under his control. He needed to know this stuff, and he needed to take affirmative, strong action way back when.
You know, Laura Schwartz, this is a guy that was convicted of exposing himself to a minor. The record was clear if it was anyone to see here. He can claim only once he didn't know, but apparently I heard through the grapevine that there might be information coming out as early as tomorrow, in fact, that contradicts that statement, and we'll see what the news coverage is like here. But doesn't he have a responsibility to step up here and take responsibility for this?
Exactly my point, Sean, that you have to do, you do have to do it. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump in.
Yeah, go ahead, Laura.
Oh, not at all. You know, I agree with Rich. When something happens within your corporation, you're the head of that corporation, it's up to you to clean that up. Now, this did not happen in Ted Strickland's corporation or his campaign as it was in 1998, but he did get this anonymous letter saying that his campaign aide was involved and had exposed himself to children earlier. He addressed that campaign aide. He denied it, and they went on from there. Personally, Sean, and even for me, I mean, as I said about Hastert, if I would have known that information as a campaign manager, for example, at that time, I would have taken it one step further. But, you know, first of all, this came from an anonymous source.
Piece of the puzzle. Let me bring up another piece of the puzzle here. And Blackwell brought this up in the debate that they had earlier this week, and that is, you know, Strickland was the only guy to, you know, say present when he failed to condemn sex in a legislative process, condemn sex with minors. It ended up, you know, winning him praise with the group NAMBLA at the time.
That was multifaceted legislation, Sean, and there was a line in that legislation that said...
The only one. Everyone else voted for it.
You know what? Ted Strickland's a minister and a psychologist, and in that legislation it said if a child is abused as a child, he will not be a healthy, functioning adult. He could not stand behind that statement and did not vote for that.
That's why he voted against it, Laura.
And, you know,
exactly right. Rich,
I think it's great that he could stand on some principle. We need that in Washington and in our states.
You know, Rich, this is desperate, last-minute attempt to save a campaign that's behind in double digits. This is what Republicans are doing all over the country, Rich. They're taking the Foley scandal and trying to turn it around on Democrats. And when it was the House leadership that knew for years and did nothing to act on what they knew about Mark Foley, and in fact urged him to run again. Now you got in California, John Doolittle, under fire for connection to Jack Abramoff, has been attacking his Democratic opponent, Charlie Brown, for being dedicated to helping the ACLU, aiding and abetting pedophiles, it's being claimed. Nancy Pelosi being accused of marching in a parade with a NAMBLA member. This is really pathetic that you're trying to do this and smear Democrats when you're the guys who didn't act in Congress when one of your congressmen
I don't remember this,
predator.
Alan, I don't remember this sense of outrage about a last-minute attack when the information about Foley had been held for a long time waiting for the appropriate moment to
There's
spring
no
that.
evidence that a Democrat released that. In fact, if Republicans had acted on Foley when they first got the information years ago, it would not be a 2006 election year ploy.
And perhaps he wouldn't be on the missing and exploited children committee.
If you don't know better, if either you know better than that or you're pretending you don't know better.
I'm not pretending. There's no evidence that a Democrat leaked it.
Well, because they won't appear before the ethics committee to find out.
Give me the evidence.
If they go before the ethics committee,
you're just making that claim with nothing to back it up. Laura, as a matter of fact,
you know what? Every single major press outlet had that same information, and nobody thought it was strong enough to act on.
I can't believe you want to go after Ted Strickland. And yet you will not even acknowledge that it was the Republican leadership in the House, Laura. They want to only attack Democrats, but they wanted to protect Mark Foley's seat. They urged him to run knowing this, and only when it came out did they then all of a sudden decide to take action, knowing all along he was a child predator.
And kept him on the co-chairman of the Missing Children and Exploited Children Caucus. These were other members of Congress and high-ranking Republican officials that brought this information to the forefront, not an anonymous letter written in the middle of a horrible smear campaign. That's what's under scrutiny by the Ethics Committee and the Department of Justice, and I believe they'll go forward. I'm glad it's happening now quickly and swiftly. But, you know, this is an act of distraction. Bob Ney, Republican representative from Ohio, right now pleaded guilty, will probably go to jail very soon, but yet he's still sitting in an office paid for by taxpayers of Ohio.
Rich, you are trying to distract from Republican scandals about which the American public has decided they've had enough, which is why Congress has a 16% approval rating, and there's more of a desire to get Democrats in office, and it seems either you're in denial about it or you just want to smear the other side because you can't take responsibility for your side.
Well, but I mean, my point is that you're misrepresenting the entire Foley situation. What the Speaker and the leadership knew at the time they knew it, which was well before these instant, you know this stuff. We're just going over the old thing.
They didn't act on it.
But you're no, but neither did anybody else who knew about it because it wasn't enough information at that time. The instant messages were a completely different deal.
Ted Strickland did not have information.
We got to take a break, but Rich, good to see you. Laura, thank you. I guess we'll all find out in 19 short days from now.
A lot smarter on November 8th.
Intensity's building, though. There's no doubt about it. All right, we check it now.